Call the meeting to order. Roll call.
Ms. Mucko,
Here.
Mr. Olson,
Here.
Mr. Walker, Mr. Erkins,
Here.
Rastegar.
Now I think we should pause because we need a quorum. So we need probably Chase to respond.
Can Chase respond or is he muted?
He's
I'm
unmuted now.
I'm here.
You just need a
Can you
shout
hear me?
out, Chase.
I cannot. Yeah.
Can you hear me now? Hello?
Let's see.
How about now? Can you hear me?
Just to be safe.
Yes.
I mean, does he need to vocalize so that we get a quorum?
Here.
Well, let's see if we can get him on first, shall we?
All right. Could you screen capture that?
Hello. 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 Anyone?
Oh.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Where is that coming from?
Hello.
Oh.
Hello.
Hey.
Oh, that's coming from the speaker of the television.
Can you hear me?
Barely, but yes, we're gonna mark you attending.
Yep, good.
Yeah, I'm here. I'm writing in the chat
All right.
too, but
Are there any changes or additions to the agenda? All right, seeing none, moving forward. We do have a quorum today, barely. So with that, I entertain a motion for the approval of the regular minutes dated December 19th.
Yeah. Did you give me a minute?
The minutes are. Sorry.
Thank you. I'll move. Is that what you want?
Yep, I'll second. All those in favor? Aye. Chase.
Do we have Chase on audio yet?
It's going to be a quiet chase from that speaker. The overhead speakers are not functioning at the moment.
Chase, can you just say yay if you want to approve the minutes? It's a good thing we don't have a lot on the agenda.
He pulled out his earpiece, can you?
is that any better?
We moved and seconded for approval of the minutes.
Okay.
All those in favor, aye.
Hi.
There we go. Thanks,
Sorry.
Chase.
The tiny voice
I
directly
think-
behind you.
Little Chase. All right, with that, we'll move on to the monthly activity and financial report.
Thank you, Madam Chair, directors of the board. Got a little bit of a different format, some of the same information being presented, a couple new slides here, as I'm kind of putting my own flavor onto the executive director's report. Couple highlights from the month, in that far left photo there, you will see Boise Center East Ballroom with no carpet on it. Right now, it has brand new carpet over in the Boise Center East building. I'm excited for you guys to take a look. We haven't got some great photos taken yet, so we're getting some professional shots scheduled. And then I'll share those with the board next month, but also you'll get a chance to see that tomorrow if you are attending the reception. So we'll get a chance to showcase the new carpet. I've heard great feedback. We've gone to more of a neutral color tone, so there's a lot of grays, blacks, and tans that are built into it. It allows people to come in and really transform the space. And as you can see in that middle photo, that's an AGC. They're using colors, uplights. And again, that'll give them more ability in that space. And we're going to continue that color palette through the rest of the expansions, or not expansions, but upgrades over Boise Center West in 2025 and 2026 for capital. So more of that to come. And then that photo in the middle is AGC, a very good event. We had fire jugglers at that, which was approved by the fire marshal. So it was the first time we were able to get that done, and it went off without a hitch. So
What's that?
we had fire jugglers, a juggler that juggled fire at the event for
What's the
AGC.
guy with has hands in the air?
That on the far right is a team building activity. They have little, actually Kleenex boxes around their waist there, and they're shaking out, I think it was ping pong balls as a team building activity. So during December, when we slow down a little bit, we get projects done. And you can see on the back wall, the chairs are pulled out. They go through all the chairs and clean them, make sure any of the broken legs are removed, any broken welds. But Alan's team, the operations team, did a really great, fun team building activity, and that's what that photo is from, of them in their middle of their team building activity.
Thank you.
Very loud laughter and cheering going on. They were rooting each other on. They did a great job with that activity. These are more operational updates, and I kind of highlighted them in just different sections here. I'll go through each one a little bit briefly. Staffing, we have Stephanie Burnside as our new Director of Finance. It'll be starting on February 5th. That was a great process that we went through using Angela Holbrook to recruit, and we have found our new Director of Finance that will be at Boise Center Monday, February 5th. Our staffing levels continue to support full space utilization, which really goes right into that next box over there with our number of events. We did actually 33 total events in December. I went back and had to go run, and I thought it was a record, but it is the most since 2018 when we did 34. And again, revenue wise, it was actually a little bit better. We had 3 very large events, the FCA Bowl Breakfast, which was about 800, AGC 700, and then Simplot also 700 plus. All of those events were very successful. And then we actually had 3 large conventions, or 3 conventions. I won't necessarily say large, probably medium-sized conventions with Idaho Farm Bureau, Aerial Work Safety, and ISA, which is the Sheriff's Association. Those were something that we have not seen that many conventions, let alone conventions like that inside December. So that kind of shows the new, where we're going from revenue managing the space and trying to pay attention to the good mix of business that makes sense. And there's also just some conventions that are having to look at dates in December now because of compression. We continue to evaluate that as we go forward and be as strategic as possible. On the facility side, I just spoke about that in the photo, the Boise Center East upgrades. We've got new carpet. We have a new incident response system that was just rolled out to the team. And what this is if there is a power outage, if there is any kind of situation, and it can be as minor as something that got reported as stolen, or as significant as an earthquake or some massive natural disaster, that would notify those within our staff appropriately. And it has a chain of command to basically make sure that the appropriate people notified based on what issue with the building, whether it's a power outage, the facilities is being notified. We just tested this, and it's a very exciting system, and it's something that we're looking forward to. It'll also send out text messages, so if people aren't just looking at their emails, you'll get notified through that new system. And then just to highlight, we got another Central District Health Department inspection in our kitchens and had 0 infractions, and that is our 6th year in a row that we've done that. That's something we're very, very proud of. And that's coming right in the half of December when we had 33 events and very large groups in-house, and they came and inspected our kitchen, so we're pretty proud of that.
You may be speaking to this later, the Baller Project.
The Baller Project is also the other one that's going to come this spring, so that'll probably be on my either next month's report or the following, that you guys will see some information on that. Weather restricting, obviously frozen ground does not make it easy to cut into concrete and get into our loading dock. Plus, we need to be strategic because we're taking a portion of our loading ramp offline to do that. So that's coming on in March. From a sales activity side, Ali attended MPI in December in Chicago. Cliff and Ali just got back actually last week from PCMA, which is over 5,000 attendees. Cliff kind of described it as the Super Bowl for meeting planners. So 5,000 different attendees. I heard Ali and Cliff saw each other once during the entire show, that they were there for 3 days in San Diego. I was a little jealous because it was 65 degrees where they were at. So had a little bit of that when here it was snowing and negative. IPEC is something that Kay is going to be attending at the end of January, and I had to look this one up. This is the Independent Planners Education Conference. So very much inside of her market, and we're looking forward to that. But that's
How big a deal is, excuse me, I'm gonna be in Greenville those days. How big a deal is?
I don't know the total number of attendees. It's probably a little bit smaller, and it's a more of a niche type of group because it's very based around education groups. So not quite the PCMA or an MPI size of show. Couple other new slides that you're going to notice here. Just got fiscal management slide here that really just shows our transfers from the capital side. Transfers is one of my goals for the board this year. And so I just wanted to kind of show some insight into the different 3 areas that drive transfers. Capital expenditures, obviously those are going to continue to go up as we see the Boise Center East remodel costs come in. We tend to outperform budget several times on the capital expenditure side, and I anticipate again this year through management processes, we should be able to do that as well. On the operating side, that just shows you the operating transfers. And again, you can start to see a little bit with the color that's on here, what December normally looks like. Some Decembers we haven't had to transfer based on where things are coming and going. And Ambry should be able to speak to some of that, but that's just natural flow of how the transfers go from year to year based on activity, how much cash that we have. coming in. We've actually taken down our transfers quite a bit due to collecting payments on the front end for events, and that's reduced our requirement for some of the transfers.
I like this.
Thank you. And then again, bond payments, it just kind of shows what we're doing on the bond payment side. Gross profit kind of shows as our history all the way back to 2016 of where we were at before Boise Center East, or as Boise Center East was opening. 34% went down to 31, and then obviously COVID is right there in the middle as the big drop off. But we've done a great job through managing just efficiencies, training, bringing on the right number of staff to get our gross profit margin back up, and we're seeing in the first month of operations in our fiscal year at 20.1%.
And this is Boise Center.
Correct. Yep. And again, the goal for me at this point is 15% is what the board has set for me, so we're outperforming that current goal.
Madam Chair,
Mhm.
sorry, I just never really understood this. Anne Marie, cash from transfers. We've had 500 and some thousand so far this year.
1,000,010.
Yeah, it's gonna,
It's 1,000,010.
Okay. So that comes into, that's deposited in our account when the hotel collects it, right?
We collect the hotel tax around, somewhere around the 15th to the end of the month, it depends on their system. And then we transfer, so it comes into the district fund, and then we transfer what the Boise Center needs into the Boise Center fund. And it just, our timing depends on the capital needs, obviously the bond payments, the same thing. This year, we had bonus, so it's, some cash flow timing. We had bonuses that were for the prior year paid in December. We also have medical insurance that we prepaid, and then we also have our annual insurance renewal. And so while from a profit and loss perspective, it doesn't look that significantly different, but the cash needs were significantly higher in December.
So that's why it's the big blue.
Yep.
Got it. And we hadn't seen that in other years.
What's that?
That's why in 24, it's lots of blue.
Oh,
Lots of
that was all
transfers in
December's
December.
transfers. And again, 21, you can kind of see a little of that. 23 a little as well, but 22, December was a little different. So again, it's how the cash flows. Some of that also changed as I explained to, kept collecting more on the front end from these clients. In the past, we just allowed some of it to be collected on the back end.
Mhm.
So we're getting deposits for that.
Well, I assumed like 5 years ago or so when you made these changes,
When I made,
the way we account the different, these are new buckets relatively.
no, it's been this way since I've been here.
I thought my predecessor and you worked out a new definition of buckets and where it goes.
Oh, there was, okay, so yes, it is new in that sense. Steve Birch and Pat had a section called operating and fixed, and it had to do with fixed costs related to Boise Center East. And we felt like Boise Center East has been here since 2016. Those costs are just part of our normal operations, and to break them out, it really didn't make a lot of sense to us. So we went back just to UC, just operating. It doesn't matter if it's for condo fees, it doesn't matter if it's for elevator costs. This is what it costs, or the cash we needed to operate the facility.
And how do you think of the remainder of the 500 that is not transferred?
I'm not sure.
Is that,
I
do you think of that
understand-
as a reserve or?
Well, we have budgeted a certain amount for the year, and we won't go over that.
Right,
This is a timing difference. Not to me, at this point, not a concern.
yeah. I'm not concerned about it either, except to the extent it makes it a little more complicated. But that's good. Thank you, Madam Chair.
And again, and this is a new slide, so if there is something in how we present this a little differently, I took a couple notes that I think that we can maybe put in a little bit more information on the total, what we're transferring, but we're trying to break this out in a way, but it is truly all Boise Center transfers, but this is how it's being broken out from capital, operating, and bond payments.
I still think it's mean when your legal counsel is colorblind to have all those colors.
Oh.
I did not know you were colorblind. That is interesting to know. Okay. I'm red-green colorblind, so we might have a little more in common than.
Do you have those glasses? Can you wear those glasses?
You just see shades.
Yeah.
Okay, again, gross profit margin went over that with that slide there. We're outperforming the current goal of 15%, and then we're at 20.1. We'll continue to keep our eye on that. This is another new slide here. It's something that you guys have used as a metric in the past for the executive director. I just want to make sure I'm bringing a little bit more attention to how that those are done. So I kind of speak to this briefly. We did change our formatting of our survey to the guests or the clients. We've seen out of the 12 answered, 1 skipped. So I'm trying to figure out why they skipped that one question. They answered all the other questions. And so I don't know if they just got, that's at the very bottom of the survey. And I don't know if they got survey fatigue.
Is it 12 people, 12
13
clients?
total since December. This is from the beginning of
Right.
December because we're starting fiscal year, have responded out of the 33 total of events that we held.
Okay,
One of them did not answer that question, but they answered other questions about AV or how that the room setup was, those types of things. The survey asks them a series of questions. This question is towards the very bottom. So it makes me wonder if this individual just got survey fatigue and went, I'm done.
What's the question?
How would you rate Boise Center on overall guest experience? It is something that I went back and I looked in 2022 out of the 270 events that we did, we had 116 total responses. That's an approximate because I didn't open up these reports to see if one carried over from a month end or a month beginning. So there might have been some from the end of November. But what it did is it gave me a good indicator that we had about a 43% return rate in 2022. This year so far, we're seeing just below 40, and I think holidays have a little to do with that. So I'm anticipating getting some additional surveys. I pulled this data as of January 16th.
got it.
So
Yeah, that would be helpful. And the total column be 12 out of
However
34,
many.
44 or whatever.
Yep.
So, and then if you wanted to throw a percentage on, that way you can kind of just track it.
the one thing I would just kind of note to the board would be some of those are gonna just happen because we're counting off of how many events we've had total. And they may not have had time to respond to that survey, so that may skew the percentage. But again, we're seeing the same, very similar response rate.
Seems
what we
like
saw.
the amount of responders is going up from when we first were tracking it, right? It was like, I think you got 12 responses a year,
Yes.
on some of the other surveys.
Survey Monkey being kind of the adopted way for surveying people now, I think is really helping because most people are comfortable with it. And also we've really tried to, I actually looked at the metric. It took on average 7.5 minutes for each of our clients to fill this out, so.
Helpful information too and feedback, yeah.
I think last month, I think maybe it was TM asked, is this for conferences and local events or
Correct.
it's for all?
All events, yeah, except for internal, anything except for obviously the internal side, so. Just some of the takeaways, and again, I'll share more of the insight and data because there is a lot of really good data that we get from this in particular, because we are getting down to the departmental level from technical services, how food and beverage was, any operational, and then event planning. And so I got a chance to see, we get lots of 5s and 4s, which means we're doing really good. I've only seen 1, 2 out of all of those that came through, and it was a connectivity challenge. It was actually a holiday party, so I want to make sure technical services doesn't feel in any way that it was a holiday party. They used our free Wi-Fi. They didn't want to pay for the other Wi-Fi, so we saw it too we tell people that's really for checking emails and maybe checking a post on Facebook. But if you're going to try to use it for streaming or to do anything significant, that's when we sell the Wi-Fi. So again, overall survey results were good and very positive. Our feedback from the surveys are shared with the entire team. I review them, I make comments, and I highlight things either in orange that maybe are a concern, or orange is probably that's a little higher of a concern. Yellow is hey, this is something we should pay attention to, and green is a lot of positive, and we have a lot of green on our reports. They get shared out with the team and then shared with all the service members, either in the back of house or somewhere, so they can see feedback directly from the client. Excited about that as well. Tax revenues continue to be very strong for the first month of December of 698,000. So we continue to see that outpaced the prior year, and we're anticipating another potential record year, but this is a little early, but we're seeing early indicators that demand continues to be very, very strong. Which will kind of speak to that on these next 2 slides here. room demand and revenues. Demand was very close when I look back at the STR report to November of 2022. The ADR is up about $5 from the same time, so that's playing into the increased revenues a little bit, but almost very, very similar percentage wise to the demand. Now, percentage wise is the key word there, because when you get into occupancy and ADR, occupancy as a percent was just slightly down from November of 22, but the actual number of rooms demanded were up. And that's because of we've got additional inventory into the market. So new rooms into the market's bringing occupancy slightly down, but overall ADR is up, and it's actually more rooms were demanded than November of 2022, even though the percentage wise of occupancy dropped slightly. Convention pipeline, again, I wish TM was here today because I kind of got a better grasp of how this is. This is very much a tracking and pacing report on the convention and pipeline side, not a total. So when you're looking at the far right columns, Ali corrected me in last month on what I was speaking to there, thinking that was the total. Those are totals within the year that are for conventions for future years. So these all play out into 2024, 2025. And even looking as far out as fiscal years 2029 through 2050, we picked up 11. We've had 36 tentative. The 11 tentative and 36 pending. That just shows you that there is interest that far out. Nothing's contracted at this point in time. And that's when it goes to confirm, but we continue to pace this pretty well. And it really gives me an indicator of how we're doing as far as the number of conventions we're picking up from the year with our efforts from the sales team. And then Jody, this slide I wanted to name after you. So you've always said it's a sales job, and I'm going to try my best to not make it that way. We have challenges. And so I wanted to highlight to the board, I think these are things that are important for you guys to just pay attention to, and what we're doing from a management side to mitigate some of the challenges. Shouldn't be any surprises here for the most part. Space demand and availability is probably our number one, continued to be challenged. We are doing a great job of tracking lost business at this point in time. So I think that's going to give us a good indicator. We've always done that, but I think we're picking up some additional fields and areas where we can be a little bit more targeted in that data and knowing what kind of business what kind of space might be the next type of investment for the district. So we continue to revenue manage the calendar and space to mitigate that challenge. Capital expenses continue to rise, things like elevators, escalators, even carpeting and the install of that. Strategic maintenance and procurement, times of the year that we're doing these and when we can try to not impact events and have to take stuff off the book, along with using government procurement programs that allow us to get a little cheaper pricing on our purchases. Safety and security continues to be, it actually was the number one. I got the update from our insurance company. The Economic Global Risk Summit moved basically AI and considering things such as manipulation or faking people's voices, video out there has become the number one risk this year, and it jumped way up. It has never been the number one. So we continue to look at safety and security from an IT side, but also from a guest experience. So the bollards is one of them. We are, and I'm actually going to be spending most of my day Monday and I believe Tuesday with DHS and CISA. They come on site, and this is an every 5-year program or every 5-year process that we've gone through. We did it for the first time about 5 years ago, and we meet with the DHS. It's free service that they provide, which is outstanding. And it's a full day sitting in with many of our operational people, answering questions of how certain things are, where certain things live within the building, possibly how access privileges work. So they identify areas for us to possibly put capital money into and reduce our risk or exposure, or even potentially go through grant programs and get some additional funding to make our building more resilient or more safe from that side. So excited about the assessment. It's a lot of work and a lot of time. They put together, like I said, a 5-year Gantt chart that kind of shows you some goals and initiatives, and they don't expect you to hit all of them, but they kind of go through the full gamut of here's what's easy, low hanging fruit, all the way up to if you restructure your whole building or rebuild your whole building, here's what we would suggest. And so it gets you a good report out of that.
So I assume they take the 5-year plan they did previously and look at that to see what you've accomplished.
Correct. Yep. They go through, and that the bollards was actually from the 5 years. So that was kind of the higher fruit up on the tree, and we're getting to that on the 5th year, which I think will bode well when DHS comes in. They'll see that we take an action. A lot of venues don't have that level of either funding or support to be able to do it. So it's one thing I want the board to know, that when I go to IAVM, this is something that I'm pretty proud of. We've had DHS and CISA speak at IAVM, and a lot of places couldn't take on the capital projects that we've been able to do in a proactive way, instead of waiting for an issue to pop up and then react. Cost of labor continues to be, and again, I'll speak to this just personally, the culture and management that we do here is something that I continue to see. We really survey our staff and finding out how things are going from that side, and the culture is alive and well, and I'm very proud of that. I want to recognize Stacy, she's not in this room, but from an HR department, you've met Katie, new addition to the HR team. She's an HR business partner, actually was our recruiter very early on in her career here, developed over at the Lineman College, and we got a chance to bring her back on. And I'm very excited about the opportunities we've got to continue to enhance our culture through Katie's experience and knowledge. Lyman College is actually known to have a really strong culture as well. So it's something that I'm very proud that she's going to be able to bring some new things back to the team and share, and already has. So. And then parking is the one being in downtown. That's moves the needle more than you know. And the way that we're mitigating that is sharing costs of parking for part-time and full-time employees. So part-time employees, they have the ability to have half their pass paid for day passes if they so choose. Some of them are still choosing to park outside of the downtown core and then walk or try to get in. That's become more difficult as weather challenges happen. So parking continues to be a top priority for me to make sure we're listening. It's the one thing that protects our quality of service for getting staff in here for large lunches, dinners, things like that. So.
Is there something you can do with, what is it? Is it Valley Regional Transit? Who runs a bus?
BRT, yes.
And do some sort of discounted passes or something?
We've talked about that, and so one of the options, if you choose not to use a parking pass here, we actually do support full-time or part-time that would have, full-time, having that option of taking a bus pass, and I have one employee that has chosen to do that.
Okay,
So
because that would help with just.
It's actually a savings on the center side, and
Right.
it benefits the employee, and they've got a bus pass year
Right,
round for that.
right.
So
Okay.
with that, I will take questions. Do you have any?
Questions? I like some of the new slides and yeah,
Yeah, I expect any of the board members, if you have feedback or you want to see it done a little differently, I can adjust, but pretty happy about the time and effort we've spent to updating some of the information and putting together in a different format, so.
Okay.
That, I will turn it over to Treasurer Report.
Oh, I guess, yeah, please. Okay, so on a combined basis, we're $402,000 to the good. Most of that comes from the Boise Center, with positive variance of 342,000. The Boise Center revenues, at 963,000, we're close to budget. But obviously higher than last year, and the reason for that is we had 4 conventions. His number and my number don't match because of he uses start date, I use end date. So you'll notice in the next slide that, anyway, there were 4 conventions, and when I went through and just did a little analysis, our banquets generated on average $11,000 more per banquet than it did in December of last year. So increased pricing, increased cost of food resulted in that. So between the increased costs and the conventions, we're tracking at a 12-month rolling average is 11 million. So we're tracking right along with our budget. And I'll add some budget lines here next month. Number of events, like I said, Cody and I don't quite match, but we have 31 local, 4 conventions, a total of 35, and we had 44 event days. This compares to prior year. Prior year was 25 events, so we're 10 higher than last year. And event days were 27, so we're, almost 15 or so higher on event days than we were last year too. And part of that is as we revenue manage and we become more full, there's not the prime dates that people want. And so people are moving into December where in the past, they haven't necessarily wanted those days. Economic impact, we were at 3 million for December. Attendance was 100 or 1,000. Local was 7.4, and then total attendance was 8,400 people.
and you haven't switched models yet.
No, we're getting a lot of, what we want to do is go backwards and kind of capture what the economic impact before otherwise you'll look like you have a big variance and all of a sudden it shot up because of the new model, so, yeah.
This is our utilization. You can see we're running pretty good in the first half, and then the second half, October is certainly higher. But that always tends to fill in as we progress throughout the year. So not a concern at this point.
In November, I would assume that a lot of that is festival, right?
And so for the center, revenues are over by 54,000 over prior year by 290. Direct labor is slightly under budget, and direct costs are under budget as well, due to lower repairs and lower use of outside contractors in December for repairs. Our EBITDA is about 50% lower than budget. I'm not sure if it's lower or higher, right? Because it's a loss and it's better than the better. And then the transfers of $1.010 million were higher than budget due to the timing of a payment of expenses. So we had software licensing, computer support, and medical insurance. We had some big payments come due, which we amortize over the year. So that's where your cash flow and your profit don't line up. Aquatics, the cost for aquatics will be less than budget for the year. We had budgeted that the building was going to be a fixed asset, and after further discussion with I Bailey, we've determined that it is going to be a note receivable and that the rent payment will be considered interest rather than a lease payment, so there is no depreciation or interest expense to be recognized. So here's our investments. We have them with Clearwater. Oh, I've lost the last name, the second name, but anyway, with Clearwater, we have 1.5 million in cash. We have 23.4 million in fixed income, so our total investment is 24.9 million. Our yield to effective maturity is 1.5. Our yield is 4.3 and our book yield's a 3.55. And the difference between those is that when we purchase the investment, depending on what the market is doing compared to what the yield is on the investment that we purchase. Our average credit ratings are all A's and above, and then just issuer concentration to show you kind of where our investments roll out and are invested in.
This is helpful.
And just, these are Clearwater Analytics. I can just cut and paste these off their website. So it makes it really much nicer now to review investments. Our cash position, and I put this at the very end, instead of before it was at the very front, because it always seems like when we get the end, everybody's like, well, what's the cash? So I'm like, okay, we'll talk about the cash at the end. So we have 26.2 million in cash. And we have 250 in the restricted fund. We have 6 million in the stabilization fund. And one more month, and hopefully I'll get to that this month, because I've got to get it done before we finish up the audit. So,
The audit's in process.
pardon?
Audit is in process.
Yes, in fact, I was gonna, the next page.
Oh.
So our audit is, we're in the second week of field work. At this point, we haven't had any corrections or adjustments. They did ask why payroll was up. And that obviously has to do with increasing our wage rates. And then with the increased revenue, the dollar amount goes up as well, so. But overall, I think the audit's going good.
Madam Chair, I met with the auditors in my capacity as chair of the audit committee and signed the engagement letter and met our new senior, had a nice conversation with them. I encourage them to do some work on site. I don't know, did that get back to you? I just like, I just think one of the benefits of outside auditors is you've got these young people doing the kicking and footing level. And I like to know how they're being treated in terms of access. And they said they would do that and hope that they, I mean, 100% of field work used to be done on site, and now it's virtually all done off site.
They did come on site to do the inventory counts. And as far as to address the access question, they have full access to our payroll system, our accounting system, and our accounts payable system. So we write up a manual that explains to them how to go find the information that they need, and they're free to go look at whatever transactions they want.
Good.
So they have
Spot
no
check.
restricted access. It's view only, but they can view whatever they deem interesting.
Good,
That was my
thank you.
question. You only access. Good.
Well, they're only like 200 yards away, so.
Yep.
Good.
And any questions?
Okay, with that, I'd entertain a motion to approve the monthly activity and financial report.
I'll make that motion and in honor of High Clock, we like seeing that cash.
All right, I'll second. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Oh, I heard little Chase.
I heard it.
Aye.
Mike Chase.
Meaning Chase. Funny, kind of with that, on to the next item with the, talking about the wage increases. I know we had the executive session last month, but we're taking action this month for the executive director compensation for Cody, just looking at, the wage rates with everything. I would propose that we increase the executive director compensation 8% as effective December 1st.
Move it.
Can I second? Drew?
Yeah.
I'll second that too, unless Chase wants to second it.
I'll second it.
Chase
Attaboy.
seconds, awesome, okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, thanks, Chase. All right, well, thanks, Cody, it's
Yes.
just the way things are going.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, on to other business.
I just can't wait.
My turn,
You're up.
Madam Chairman.
You're like, what, a week or two in? Is this second? week?
Well, we're about ready to end the second week. We end on the 8th. And things are already starting to get bubbling. As you well know, the governor kicked off the state of the state. He had 200 million for school facilities improvements, 75 million into his launch program, which is helping high school kids move on to vocational training. $200 million for bridge repairs. I mean, those are kind of the overarching big brush items that he wanted to take care of this year. It's all basically infrastructure improvement and maintenance. $5.3 billion budget, a $2.8 million increase. This has all been met with, I won't call it outward opposition by the legislature. But what they did this year in JFAC, they've changed the structure in which the Joint Finance Appropriation Committee operates. They're doing it in what they call O&M budgets. They're going in and saying, we're going to have an operation and maintenance budget. And then if you want to have additions to that budget, you have to come back for a vote of the committee and then a vote of the floor. Well, that's going to put everybody in a very difficult situation, because you could roll like education, let's say the facilities, school facilities budget. Well, that used to be able to just roll into the education budget where everybody wanted to vote for public ed, so they'd all vote for it. Well, they carved that out. They'll carve that out now, so that has to be an individual vote on each one of these matters, and it's going to cause some problems down the road. Janie Ward Engelking told me right before lunch. She said we voted on 21 budgets on Monday, Tuesday, and there were 21 budgets, 21 agencies, all the budgets, one vote. There's just one vote. Yes, up or down on those 21 budgets. And she said, there's stuff in there that we need a chance to really look at and kind of, winnow through to kind of figure out what should or shouldn't be done correctly. The health and welfare budget's a really good example. It's supposed to be an operation and maintenance budget. They cut the administrative staff number out of it. It's not even in it. So I bring that to everyone's attention because I think what we're gonna see is this kind of, as this moves through the legislature, we're gonna start seeing a lot of unforeseen problems that come about with it. I think there's a huge downside risk to it. You have the chairman of the committees of jurisdiction have absolutely no authority right now. They're just watching this all happen. There's no real policy implication into it. But this plays right into, Speaker Moyle's hands. I mean, he's a transactional politician, and that's why he'll play this. He'll build up these issues. Governor wants this, the governor wants that. Well, I want tax cuts. I mean, he's playing for his 0.01 tax cut coming this year, and that's gonna cost 50 million. So he's gonna try to find 50 million, and he'll have something on, who knows what. He's got 3 or 4 different issues out there he's messing around with. So,
Well, Pat, overall, is this one of those years where it's scraping for every dime? Or is this one of those years where we're flush and they're just deciding who's gonna get the most?
the revenue projections are downward. And there's not a lot of money floating around there. We had a $58 million overrun in Medicaid. We had about, I think they said at the end of the day, we had something around $200 million in surplus. But you take Medicaid, you take a couple of issues out there that you start adding on, group insurance is 25, 30, it's pretty much whittled down to nothing. So, not a bare bones budget, but there's no money to be thrown around. Like, gosh, the last few months we've had $1 billion over surpluses. And we have a lot of legislators that have never seen anything but those sort of surpluses. And so it's a structural shift for a lot of people. I mean, some of the, more senior legislators have seen this and they can deal with it. But these younger folks are like, how are we going to handle this? And so it's going to be a very interesting year. Now, so part of that is you have the folks that want their budget, that their priorities in the legislature. Well, the governor and the legislature fighting over that same dollar. So I think what they've kind of structured is if they could hang these things out here for the governor, they get to trade off with the governor some of his budget items for some of theirs. I think that's what we're going to get done at the end of the year. This kind of big push and shove about, who's going to get funded. But they're going to have, we got Medicaid fights. They're going to be protecting children from harmful materials, internet and libraries. We're already starting to see those bills come up. We're always talking about there's the social justice bills we're going to deal with. They're going to try to find a way to include an exemption, allow for abortion, on the abortion bill, the health care of the mother at risk, life of the mother. There's some discussion about trying to moderate the abortion bill. And then, of course, the big issue I think running around there that no one's talking about and hasn't hit yet is school choice. They want to, there should be tax credits, voucher systems. That's all going to be discussed. I frankly think that's one of the reasons they restructured this JFAC committee because that's been a big issue for Wendy Horman. And I think she can hold out a whole bunch of public school money in public schools to try to get that voucher bill. So it's going to be very interesting year. It's a different structure. We're not used to this structure quite yet. Everyone's trying to figure it out. We've been talking to JFAC members and they're, even the members themselves saying, yeah, we're kind of playing this out, We were a little frustrated that we had to vote on 21 budgets. We don't know how that's going to play out.
It passed. That passed.
Yeah, we haven't seen no response from the governor yet too. I mean, someone asked me the question, well, if you were the governor's chief of staff, what would you do? And I said, well, I'd start vetoing those bills. As soon as the bill gets down there, I just veto and say, doesn't have X, Y, and Z in it until it gets that in it. Then I remind them that May 26th, 4th, I believe, is the primary. And I'm the governor of the state of Idaho, and I'm not a free election this year. So you guys can be here till July if you like. That'll prompt a lot of these folks to start moving because they're going to want to get here early. That's the one thing you are seeing. A lot of bills introduced early this year. There's a lot of movement already. I mean, we're already running. There's just a lot going on. They're talking about getting out of here. They're saying the 21st. But they'll get out of here between the 21st and probably 26th, I would imagine. But they're geared up to go home early this year. It's election year. Driven by, in the past, the filing deadline's March 1st, 15th. And historically, everyone just kind of sits back and goes, okay, who's gonna run against me? And they wait till March 1st or 15th. Well, this is a unique year in that there's been a lot of recruiting out there for candidates in the Republican primary. There's a lot of Republicans that are challenged right now. And for every day they're here, challengers out there working against them. And that's duly noted. You can feel a little of their angst. They want to get out of here, go home and start
What were
campaigning.
those filing dates again? February first?
First to the 15th, I believe it is. So
Of March.
March,
Okay.
1 through 15 filing days for elections. These operation and maintenance budgets are really being called into question. And I think you're starting to see some of the jurisdictional committees looking at these. They haven't been part of this dialogue. This is all going through JFAC. So you have the transportation chairman saying, well, I got a $300 million the governor wants in funding for roads. I haven't had a real input into that. There's $50 million extra that there's gonna go into that. That's happening. You have health and welfare. John Vandewater talked to us today, he hasn't been included into the health and welfare discussions on those budget issues. And traditionally, they vet some of those policy issues in the committees of jurisdiction. And then that kind of turns into, let's take that to JFAC and see what that's gonna cost and how we can fund and budget it. All being done within the confines of JFAC. So I guess we're just gonna wait to see what happens with that, but I know there's some frustration levels developing. And for us here at the GBAD, we're gonna be looking at ESG restrictions. We're watching for those issues. Limits on lease, city lease durations, some of the financing options we'll look at. Restrictions on certain kinds of performance or displays in public owned spaces. We're watching those, all those issues that could crop up in an election year. So this is one of those things when you're so used to a structure, and then all of a sudden they've really flipped the structure on us here. And I think that's gonna be very interesting to watch. And frankly, I think that, that it's gonna have to be, the governor's gonna have to play on this somehow, or they're gonna box him to the point where they can basically dictate all the policy in the legislature. And essentially what they're doing too, they're taking these agencies and they're setting what policy they want in that agency, and they're budgeting to that policy. And I think that's, the governor's always been able to build the policy in those agencies and how those agencies are gonna operate. The way they're structuring it, they're gonna be able to do that.
So who decided the structure change and who can change it back?
Wendy Horman, the chairman of the House Appropriations, and then Scott Grove, who's chairman of the Senate Finance Committee, but they're the joint finance. But there's been some discussion that Mr. Moyle might have been involved with maneuvering that around, but that's where it came from. To me, again, this is just me speaking, it looks like a land grab. They're gonna be able to control almost everything within government if they allow this to kind of take place. But I do think, but the governor hasn't played his hand yet either. He's waiting to see how this all kind of rolls out. We'll see him the next 2 or 3 weeks. He'll start moving around. He's got his staff working really hard on this stuff, making sure that they're positioned for funding. And so, see, we call in the office a lot. We've had a lot of meetings with the governor's office on these infrastructure issues. And so they're geared up, they're ready to go, but the challenges are coming. And that's it for week 2. Any questions?
Any questions?
We feel like we're in the 8th week of the session. It's really, it hit fast. But again, I think that's because they want to get out. And I do think they will get out very early. Unless the governor starts saying, okay, how long? He could hold them here he could really cause some. He so desires.
All right, keep us up to date.
Well,
Thank you. All right, seeing no other business before the board, meeting's adjourned.
Thank you. I think I've made 30